Hello, Bobby Torres of Frightbox recording here. So the question is this: do you feel like sometimes your mixers are just overly bloated, overstuffed, and like everything is sort of like, stepping on top of one another and you're unable to hear things clearly? Well, if this is you, you're gonna wanna watch this entire video from start to finish to learn the 4 techniques that people rarely talk about to help unclog your bloated mixes. Let's dive into it. So before we dive into today's tutorial, I just want to let you know that a lot of people send me their mixes, and the truth is, so many of us are falling victim to the exact same mistakes when it comes to mixing in general. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that most people just don't understand basic EQ and compression. I hear a lot of muddy mixes, a lot of harsh mixes, and the truth is, it's unnecessary. All you have to do is just, again, understand basic EQ and compression, and that will get you a long way to the results that you're really after in your home studio. Now, to help you out, I've put together something called my crisp and clear heavy mix formula. The heavy mix formula is a straightforward PDF guide that showcases all of my starting points for EQ and compression on all of the main instruments within a typical heavy production. Not only do you get the EQ and compression cheat sheet, but there are also private tutorials along with a multi-track download that goes along with each of the individual tutorials so you can mix along with me. The crisp and clear heavy mix formula is absolutely free right now, and you can download it by clicking the link below in this video's description. I want you to achieve better results in your home studio with the gear and plugins you already have, and this guide is definitely gonna help set you in the right direction. So like I mentioned at the start of this video, so many people struggle with the issue of overstuffed mixes where things are really stepping on top of one another. And in this video, I'm going to showcase all 4 of the techniques that I regularly use to help unclog my mixes. And again, the truth is I just don't see these techniques being shared enough on the internet. And technique number 4, I think, is really going to surprise you. So with that out of the way, let's talk about technique number 1. Technique number 1 is to automate your kick drum track, specifically if you are using drum samples, and even more specifically if you're using programmed drums. Now, when I mention this to people, specifically people that utilize MIDI drums, a lot of times people will tell me, well, I'm already adjusting my velocities. Why do I have to utilize automation? Well, the truth is, especially if you're utilizing MIDI drums, you have to automate certain sections, specifically faster sections of your kick drum. So right here, I have a mix pulled up and I'm gonna demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about. I have a song that has some pretty fast double bass, some medium speed double bass, but specifically, I want to pay attention to the faster double kick sections. Let's check it out. Now, a lot of times when people send me their mixes that feature sections like this, it becomes a mess during the double kick sections, specifically when people are using samples or MIDI drums. And here's the thing, we have to remember, when it comes to low end, you can get away with much more low end when the music is slower and simpler. Once things get super busy and super fast, you just can't. It's gonna muddy up your mix and give you that vibe where things are really stepping on each other's toes. Now, what people tend to do is overcomplicate the issue and use MS processing and side chaining and dynamic EQ. It's just not necessary. Basic volume automation that's absolutely free, in my opinion, does the best job, specifically with this issue. And that's because we're taking the kick drum and reducing all of the frequencies simply by lowering the volume. So not only are you reducing the top end and making it sound more natural, because no drummer can hit that intensely while playing that fast, but we're also reducing the low end so it doesn't get all messy during these faster sections. So if we look at this super duper brutal section here where there's a ton of blasting and a ton of fast double kick, I've gone in and I've reduced my kick drum by almost 3 dB. And you don't notice it in the mix. Let me play it for you once more. You can still hear the attack of the kick, but it sounds really natural. Now, these are live drums, but the kick drum is a sample. And remember, a sample is pretty much perfect. So I'm going in here and reducing the volume of any section that's overly fast to help keep my low end clean and to help keep my mix nice and clean and let all of the other elements breathe. Please do not be one of these home studio owners that are just too lazy to utilize volume automation. There's a reason why all pro mixers use a ton of volume automation. People hate hearing this, but it's the truth, and I'm here to spread the truth. Okay, and this leads me to technique number 2 that you're gonna wanna utilize if you want a nice open sounding mix that doesn't sound bloated and like things are competing with one another all the time. And it's simple. Use LCR panning for most of your tracks. It amazes me how many people contact me and are nervous about using LCR panning, worrying about phase problems and things collapsing into mono. Don't worry about it. Some of the best metal mixers and hard rock mixers in the world utilize LCR panning. Jordan Valerian, Chris Lord-Alge. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And it's good enough for you. Now, the reason why this is an issue is, ironically, by not panning things wide, people will pan their guitars in, their keyboards in, their leads kind of 50% to the left, a vocal track 50% to the right. And what ends up happening is things are stepping on one another in these in-between sections of the stereo field. And they'll pan only a few things out wide. In my opinion, it's more effective to go the opposite way with this and to pan most things either hard left, up the center, or hard right, and only a few things in between. It's way easier to achieve a nice open, unclogged, unbloated sounding mix when utilizing this approach. Let me give you some examples. For example, in this mix, I have my kick drum up the center, pretty typical, but my toms are panned in between. My rack tom is panned about 25% right, and then my floor tom is about 67% left. My overheads are hard panned because we have to remember if a drum set is being mic'd in a smaller room or even a medium-sized room, you don't have to pan your overheads in. There's already so much crosstalk between those two microphones. My rooms are hard panned, my guitars are hard panned. You're gonna want to hard pan your rhythm guitars. People really freak out about this, but it's generally home studio owners that freak out about this. Most pros hard pan their heavy guitars, specifically in metal and hard rock. I have a ton of orchestral elements. They are all hard panned. I have keyboards here that were recorded in mono and split off to stereo. They are hard panned, and my vocals are pretty much all up the center, and my background vocals and gang vocals are hard panned. So as you can see, around 85 to 90% of my mix is LCR here. And that's why it sounds so open and wide. Use LCR panning, and it's gonna help you achieve that mix that you're probably going after, i.e., a pro sounding mix. A lot of what's out there on the internet is really not true or overly exaggerated, sort of like gain staging. Okay, and this brings me to tip number 3 that most people don't talk about and that will have a huge effect on achieving a nice mix that's open sounding and not overly stuffed, and that is to use guitar automation. Again, most of us hate using automation. It is not as fun as talking about EQ plugins, compression plugins, and looking for quick fixes like sidechain compression. You don't need any of that stuff. Basic automation goes a long way. So many times people will send me their mixes and, for example, the guitars will be playing and a lead will come in and it just sounds overly loud, and then leads will drop out and all of a sudden things sound overly quiet and the guitars sound weak. And they'll ask me, what amp sim should I use? What EQ plugin should I be using? Should I use MS processing? Should I be using sidechain compression going from my rhythm guitars to my lead guitars? No. All you need to use is basic volume automation. I've covered this a million times, but I will cover it a million more times until it is drilled into people's subconscious. And there's a reason why all pros utilize this technique. Now, yes, automation can seem tedious, but I find it to be really fun, specifically because I have a lot of experience now and I know how much of a difference it can really make. The simplest one, in my opinion, is just simply reducing your rhythm guitars behind your lead guitars. This is going to help you out in 2 different ways. Number 1, you're not going to have your lead guitars as loud when they come in because there will be more room in those frequencies because you're slightly lowering your rhythm guitars. And number 2, it'll make your guitar sound way more balanced and less like they are stepping on top of one another, because they won't be stepping on top of one another. We can only listen to so many elements at once in a mix, and generally when a guitar solo is happening, we are not paying much attention to the rhythm guitar. They become a background element or a rhythmic element. So let me give you a simple example here. Here's a guitar solo that kicks in after a chorus, and I'm slightly reducing the rhythm guitar volume by about a dB, but it goes a long way to make room for the lead guitars or the guitar solo. Check it out. So what I did here is, again, the guitars are sitting at a specific level throughout the chorus, and then I'm cutting the level by about a dB when the guitar solo kicks in, and then when both guitar players are doing dueling leads, I'm actually reducing the rhythm guitar level by 2 dB. Simple stuff, you don't even notice it in the mix, and all of a sudden things are just sitting way more easily, things sound way more open, and things don't sound bloated and overstuffed. It's a sound that we all hate, and it's really simple to cure as long as you pay attention to these elements that I'm sharing with you that, again, most people don't talk about much. Bonus tip for you. If you have elements of your guitar riffs that you want to pop through the mix and you're struggling because sometimes your guitars sound too loud, and then when you have them quieter, you're missing specific elements, simply boost those elements or those moments in your production by a few dB and then reset your automation back to normal. Let me give you an example here. In this chorus, there's this awesome kind of Iron Maiden part that the guitar players played, and it was getting lost in the mix. But when I cranked the guitars were way too loud, they were covering up the vocal, they were making the snare sound distant. So all I did was go in, and only for not even a full measure here, I cranked the rhythm guitars by 2 dB just when the two rhythm guitars played this quick little Iron Maiden-esque riff. Pay close attention. Now I'm gonna delete that automation and listen to how much of a difference it makes. The riff gets lost, that little part gets lost within the production. This is something so many of us struggle with, especially when starting out, especially when you're working in your home studio and you're kind of working within a vacuum and not communicating with other engineers. Most people will struggle endlessly, myself included, by making things loud and making things quiet when all you had to do is just bump up that section by a few dB. They have been automating things in the studio and pushing faders since the dawn of time. It's a massively powerful technique in the mixing process. Let's hear it once more with the automation. By the way, this is a song I just produced with my good friends in a band called Mainline. The song is called In Secrecy We Trust, and I will leave a link below in this video's description where you can check out the entire track on the band's Bandcamp page. Okay, and here we go. Here's the big tamale, technique number 4 that's gonna help unclog your mix and help it sound less bloated sounding. And you ready for it? It's very simple. Stop, for the love of God, stop recording so many unnecessary tracks. Just because your DAW can handle 300 tracks at once doesn't necessarily mean that you should be recording 300 tracks for absolutely no reason at all. This is really common with bedroom producers and home studio owners. For the longest time, I would mix some of these projects where people would send me their raw tracks to mix, and it was unbelievable. 40 guitar tracks, 100 guitar tracks, and often 80% of them were completely unnecessary and not serving the song. And here's the truth, recording a bunch of tracks that are not well produced and not edited and not tight is actually gonna make your production sound smaller and is definitely gonna make your production sound overly bloated. Many of us are going for that huge production, that crystal clear production that we hear on our favorite records, and it doesn't come from more tracks. It comes from well-recorded, well-produced tracks that have been strategically chosen for that specific production. For example, this particular production was more of an organic production that I was going for, but I was going for a pretty big sound, and so was the band. And if we look here, it's not many tracks. It's around 32 tracks, and that includes all of the leads, all of the vocals, and all of the drum tracks, and of course, the bass track. And that's about it for the entire song. Now, yes, specific styles of music will call for additional tracks or maybe more tracks, but always keep in mind, more tracks do not equate to a bigger sound. A well-produced song, sounds captured right at the source, and things chosen strategically for that particular mix will result in a cleaner, bigger sounding mix than a bunch of random tracks recorded for absolutely no reason at all. Trust me. So there you have it. Those are 4 techniques that I don't hear people talking about enough on YouTube. People love talking about the latest and greatest amp sim plugin, the latest and greatest drum software, but no one seems to talk about the things that actually make a real difference in a mix. So I'm curious to know, are you practicing all of these techniques within your own productions? Or are these things that you are overlooking and just not paying attention to right now? Let me know by leaving a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your opinion. And again, if you'd like to improve the sound of your mixes, upping your game and understanding basic, super simple EQ and compression in its simplest form will have a massive impact on the sound of your productions. And if you'd like to learn more about EQ and compression, you could download my crisp and clear heavy mix formula. You get a PDF cheat sheet that contains all of my starting points for EQ and compression on the main tracks within a heavy production, as well as private tutorials that demonstrate how I use these techniques in the real world, and multi-track downloads that go along with each of the tutorials. Again, the crisp and clear heavy mix formula is absolutely free right now, and you can have instant access right now by clicking the link below in this video's description. If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and share. And do not forget to click that little bell icon so you can be notified every single time I upload weekly videos on all things metal and rock production. Till next time, happy mixing.